Hey guys, I'm Brian.
And I'm Terry.
And welcome to the Forest Farm Project. We passed the first part of our rough-in inspection.
Yes, sir. We had to get it roughed in before we insulated, and now we have to insulate to get the final inspection.
Yep, and we have to call.
Final rough-in inspection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many inspections.
Yeah, we have to do a little bit of, I don't know what it is, draft stopping for it's caulking now. Mm-hmm. I guess different areas have different rules and regulations on it, and they kind of make it up as they go, because I've asked a couple different inspectors. I've asked a couple, or we have
half a dozen different carpenters.
Everybody says something different. And
some of them just ramble on off in the distance and never really say anything.
And what they're saying is, I have no clue.
But nobody wants to say those three words of I don't know.
Yeah, don't be an I don't know.
I don't know a phobe?
Yeah, there you go. I don't know a phobe. Because I can't tell you how many people will just, like he said, ramble on and never say a thing. Mm-hmm. And they won't say, I don't know.
If
well, you could do this and you should do that. And this will probably work. I'm like, we want to pass inspection. Probably isn't going to get it. We might do it right the first time,
So Dad's going to take about 5 gallons of caulk in there and have at it.
Yeah. Well, there's more to it than, we wanted to know what the code was, kind of so we could share that with you. We're going to do something different.
Yeah.
So it really didn't matter, because he's not going to find anything wrong with what we do.
No, definitely not.
We're overkill just a little bit.
Yeah. Dad wants this. He wants the entire house to be perfectly draft stopped, but this is only an addition that we're doing, so there's not going to be any air gaps in this place.
I'll tell you what you can do, though, in your house you live in, if it's old. He went around to every outlet, tapped on the floor, and I crawled under the house, and I took a can of spray foam, multiple cans, and I foamed every hole where every wire is going up, every pipe, anything that penetrated between the floor to ceiling, whatever, in the walls. Mm-hmm. Then I crawled around the attic, even to the very outskirts of it, before we blew insulation, and hit every hole. I took wherever the light fixtures were and foamed over the entire light fixture boxes, because you can go in there when the air's running and it's really cold out, put your hand up next to it and dampen it, and you will feel the air blowing across your hand. Put it next to a light switch or next to a receptacle, and the air's coming through them holes and it's getting sucked into the house. Well, if it's sucking cold air in through all them nasty crawl space and attic and the insulation in the walls, then it's blowing warm air out somewhere else while it's heating, because it's got to be going somewhere.
Any newer house shouldn't be that way, because they all have to be draft stopped or caulked or fire foamed or whatever on the rough end. But any older house, pre-90s?
I don't know, somewhere. It hadn't been that long that they've had to do all this foaming. Well, I guess it has been.
Yeah.
We're getting old.
Yeah, we are.
I have to remember that sometimes.
Yeah.
We'll be out doing something, especially if it's some of his buddies, and I'm just like the rest of them, even though I'm like 20-something years older. And then Brian's like, Dad, you're 56 years old. And I'm like, you know what? Until you said that, I forgot.
And for instance for you, a fun one. We're at the climbing gym, and we were filming a commercial for the climbing gym, and all of us younger people were over doing bat hangs, which is where you hang by the tips of your toes and do sit-ups, just hanging by the tips of your toes off of a platform above you.
Not touching anything. You hook your toes over a ledge, upside down, and then you just hang.
And you hang by basically your big toe and the other toes, and you do sit-ups. Mr. 50-something year old decides, I'm going to do that too.
I did it.
And he did it.
And they're all little scrawny runts that climb all the time.
I'm not a little scrawny runt.
No, all them other guys. And you were skinny back then too.
You saying I'm fat now?
No. You're full.
You're digging a hole here.
But anyway.
He did it, it was surprising.
I forgot about that. That was one of the days when you said, Dad, you realize you're 50. Well, I was about 52 then.
Yeah, it's been about 4 or 5 years.
Till you said that, I didn't. I was just another one of the kids.
Yeah.
But, oh, well. Let's get to this.
Yeah, let's have some fun.
Yep. So, based on multiple responses, the best we could gather, everybody's response was slightly different. But what the inspectors expect to see, right here where there's studs, this forms a corner. There'll be like 3 studs going that way, and then there's 1 stud here. They want that caulked all the way down, because apparently air could get between these studs since there's irregularities in that wood. Up here, you have your top plate, your 2 top plates And that gap right there, this happens to be a big gap because wood obviously was not in good shape. Over here, this is normal. You caulk that joint there as well. Then they want to see this around the edge of the floor where the bottom plate, that's the bottom plate, and this is obviously the floor. They want that caulked all the way around the room. Now additionally, some other people have said around any windows or doors or anywhere that two boards meet, that like right here is, there's only one board, so you wouldn't caulk anywhere here. But here, anywhere you got a seam between two boards, because you can see the gap there, and there'll be little gaps. They want all that sealed everywhere them boards meet. Now they didn't say to get where that board meets that board, and I can't understand why you wouldn't do that if you got to do that, and you got to do this. But I don't make the rules, I just play by them. Additionally, like here where you got two studs touching, all the way down that seam has got to be caulked. Up here on this sheathing, this is the outside sheathing, we foamed this because there was a small gap up there. Over here, there was a gap down in here somewhere. The siding came up and then they went again, and it had about an inch wide gap. So we put this foam board over it, and then we foamed the cracks. That way no air can get into the room, into this insulated cavity here. So that's basically the areas that, if you add all the different areas that the people that we talked to said what to do when you're caulking for this draft stop, I guess you would call it. That's all the areas that you are required to do. I'm going to share a little story with you. I talked to a guy, it's been years ago, probably 15 years ago or better, and he owned a company doing that spray foam where they spray the walls completely full of foam. They do the roof rafter areas and whatnot, and the house ends up being airtight. I asked him, I was looking at building a house way back then, never did it, but I wanted to. Finally getting to it now. But anyway, I asked him, you know, how much was that going to cost? And he told me an outrageous amount of money for being a young person back then or younger, and I didn't have the money that I wanted to dump into that. So I said, well, I guess I won't be doing that. Well, we kind of hit it off, and he said, I'm going to tell you something that I don't really tell people because it cuts into my business. But he said, you can go and caulk all the places I just told you. In addition, every place that wood and siding meets, all the way down, every place that wood meets wood, every place that wood meets siding there. And basically, you are sealing off every one of these cavities and making them airtight. He said, if you do that and then you buy high density insulation, which there's a difference, it's got a higher R factor for the same number of inches. If you put that caulk in every joint like that and seal it off completely where no air can flow, and then put the high density insulation, he said it's not as good as a spray foam, but he said it is as close as you're going to get. It's almost as good. And he actually did the thermal imaging and looked at how much heat was getting through walls and whatnot. He did that on a regular basis because he was kind of experimenting and an innovator of that foam back then. It might have been 15 years ago or more, I'm not sure. But anyway, I just thought I'd share that. That's a way of really sealing off tight. Now these, unless you've got a seam in the siding, if air flows, it would just flow from one side to the other. It wouldn't be a big deal. Where airflow would be a big deal is down here at these bottom plates. There's a chance that that siding doesn't fit tight to this wood in different areas. Like right there, you can see there's a tiny bit of a gap. Over here, it looks like it's very tight. I am going to caulk along this seam at the bottom. Reason being, if you think about it, a lot of people say when you talk about this, they say, you got insulation in the wall, what more do you need? Well, that insulation takes on a certain amount of the temperature in your house. The heat gets through the sheetrock, and let's just say for winter time, I'll just use winter as an example. It's going to be the same thing in summer in reverse because heat rises. So anyway, you've got insulation. What do you need all that barrier for? Well, it's this wall cavity, and every wall cavity is like a chimney. If there's a gap down there at the baseboard somewhere, letting air in, and if there's a little gap up there, like these gaps that were up top, then that air, heat rises. If you stand over your toaster, hot air rises out of the toaster. Same effect here. It may not be as hot, but if that air is warmer than the air down low or the air outside, whatever, it's going to rise. Heat's going to rise out that crack. Cold air is going to sink in that same crack. And because of the rise, it's going to cause a draft, and any holes down below or any cracks around that siding, hot air is going to rise up through that wall cavity. I'm sorry, outside air, which is cold air in the wintertime, is going to rise up through that wall cavity, and it's going to keep that wall kind of cold. And if that wall's cold, the cold's getting into the house, and you're losing heat, and you're heating the outside little at a time. But if it's around your whole perimeter of your whole house, it could be like having a window standing open all winter long, and people don't realize it because it's just a minute bit. So sealing that up is really important. And that's where if you come up to an outlet right here, if there's a big crack or if there's a hole down here, they used to not make you foam around these pipes or foam around the wires like we did. So that air from the crawl space would literally come up when you're heating, and it would, especially if your heat pump comes on and say you got a return in this room, and here's a switch or a receptacle, wet your hand and put it right next to it, and you will feel that air just flowing through that outlet. It's coming up through that hole out of your nasty crawl space, and most crawl spaces have pretty bad air, and it'll come right through them outlets. It'll come through any crack anywhere that is there. So it's really important to do the draft stopping, as much as people don't think it is important. A lot of people don't, but it really is. Well, let's get started. Obviously, we can't caulk where the plate is. Now, I've seen them take a putty knife and make sure it's good and flat, and that helps push it into that joint at the same time. But in the same respect, it's also making it where the sheetrock's still going to set flat. Now, I'm going to give it a second round there. Wipe off any excess. I'll put that in that joint right there. A big old hole right there. I'll put it up there too. Fill that hole in. Okay. Not looking for anything fancy here, just get the coverage on there. Now I'm going to smooth this out in this corner with my finger, because you can't really get any one particular side of it. And push pretty hard, and that's going to push it up into them cracks. And watch out for splinters. So there's no air going to get through there, except right there. And I fixed it. Yep. That one's going to be a booger. I'll stuff it full. There we go. Looking good. Now, you normally caulk around the bottom here. This little, we got a 1 foot section here that we have not yet nailed down. So I don't want to caulk here, because we've got that where we can pull it up if we need to add any more wires when we start working on the kitchen, which we may do, I'm not sure. Well, that's about it. We've got it caulked. All we're going to do, we did do the extra on the bottom of these walls, and I had already foamed up top so that it's sealed up to help draft stop the wall itself. If anybody has any input for their area, I'd like to know what people are having to do to caulk their wall cavities like this, or even if they have to. Some areas didn't adopt that, some did. And our county and our city tends to vary from area to area, so you really have to know what's going on. But anyway, that's about it, and I hope you enjoyed it. Check us out on Facebook. Check us out on Instagram. We do a lot of pictures on Instagram when we're out busy and don't have time to film, or it might be a while after we put those pictures online before we ever actually make the film, because you can put a picture up quick. It takes a while to put them videos together, and Brian has to do all that, standing behind the camera right now. So anyway, if you like what you see, give us a big thumbs up. Check back soon. The installation will be coming next, and thanks for watching.